Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So we are happy to present. I am happy to present this soul contract series. This we are kicking off, going straight for the gut, straight for the sacral with the Parenthood edition. I am joined by my mama, Margaret.
Telling all our secrets.
Telling all our secrets. If you have wondered anything about me, why I am the way I am, how I got this way, how difficult I am, she is the woman to ask. We have Monica Cox, a functional fertility health coach who's just the bomb.com for helping you get and stay pregnant naturally. I'll let everybody introduce themselves in their own ways, but just like really quickly. Okay, Cristina Menendez, who is happy. Oh, I should be telling you guys like how many children these people all have, like why I have them here on this podcast. My mom is one of 15, like 14 siblings, so she knows about a parent who parented, but she also birthed not just me, but my three brothers, my three younger brothers. Monica, you have two beautiful boys. Cristina Menendez is an author, poet, sound wizard, light language wizard. One of my dearest and first soul sisters coming up. She's got two beautiful daughters, and Miss AnnaMarie Greene, intuitive mental health therapist, social worker, clinical therapist, and happy mom of one, Scarlett, one. She's hoping for more.
I know. Oh my gosh, did I have another one and I wasn't even aware.
I'm jumping the gun here. She does want more, but right now, one. So, welcome, everyone. Please, let's start with you, Monica, and then Mom, you'll round it out. But Monica, go ahead and give us a little bit more about your background and like your just a brief bit about your journey to becoming a mom.
Yeah, so I started at 27. I always knew that I wanted to be a mom. I'm the eldest of 20 plus grandchildren and had always worked in early education. And I struggled. I had unexplained infertility, failed IVFs, eventually found the root cause, started having miscarriages after found the root cause. But eventually I have an IVF baby, and then I got pregnant naturally after an 8-year journey. And I have two beautiful little boys. And now I know I was contracted, or they were contracted to me to start triggering the shit and help me start exploring and digging down to my true potential here on Earth. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Cristina, you next.
Hi, everybody. I am Christy Happy Place, and as Abigail said, I am a Reiki master, light language channeler, sound bowl player, artist because I love to perform, I love to write, I write poetry, and really what brought me into this journey was my daughters wanting to instill in them emotional intelligence and then figuring out that I didn't have any. So my biggest triggers and also my biggest teachers are my children. I have two little girls, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and boy, do they teach you presence. Boy, do they teach you about who you are because they mirror it constantly. And I can definitely go on and on and on about our soul's contrasts between my two kids and myself. So yeah.
Miss AnnaMarie, you next.
Yay. Hi, I'm AnnaMarie. So as Abby said, I am an intuitive therapist. I'm a licensed clinical therapist. I've been a therapist since 2020. I have my master's in social work, my undergraduate in science and social work, and I am a professional intuitive, and I bridge psychology and energy work so that it simplifies everything in the mental health world. But I would definitely say that my journey started with my daughter. I got unexpectedly pregnant when I was 22 years old, and I was a junior in college. And it really caused me to question where I was at spiritually and my connection to source, because I was very much like I had a 10-year plan and it just threw me totally off the rails. And since then, I've really grown. And I've learned that my daughter and I have many, many contracts together. She is super powerful in her own way. And my spiritual awakening part one definitely happened at that point, and then it's been rapid to now. And it did inspire me to go into the work I'm in now, because we lost her father when she was 1.5, and I wanted something more to help her with the grief of grieving somebody that she wouldn't remember, but that it would, that would be in her life throughout as she grows. So
Mom, so much to tell, so much to tell. You know what? I had Abby when I was 23. When I had her, I knew that that's what I was supposed to do. Actually, with all my kids, I knew Abby and James have one father, Sterling and Peyton have another. When I was younger, I knew when things were going to happen. But with the amount of kids in the family, and I didn't think we were poor. At that point, I didn't know what that was. So we just kind of did our own thing. But the backlash of stop telling me what's going to happen, stop saying things you don't know, that kind of thing, made me just decide one day to just be done. Right? Like I wasn't going to do it anymore. I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to put it out there. Then, a couple years earlier from now, Abby came and was like, hey, you want to do Oracle cards? And I thought to myself, all these years, I've been waiting for somebody to say, do you want to learn how to do this again? Right? So my soul contract with my children is to give them the tools that I know that I have and had when they were growing up, and allow them to be who they are today. Like I never put the dads were never in the picture. I never put myself in a single mother category. Like that was kind of my thing where I was like, nah, I'm not a single mom, right? Like in my world, I already knew that I had help from somewhere out in the universe. Like that was I always knew my kids were going to be taken care of. I knew we were going to be fine. So I think for me, my soul contract was to do exactly what I did, which was to get them to adulthood, to teach them what I knew, and then to keep teaching. Because if any of you guys have older children, you already know that never stops.
So you actually bring up a really good point, Mom, about like having this sense of, or a good place for us to start, I should say, having a sense of like you're taken care of. Is that something that the rest of you guys have as moms, or do you feel like that's something that you're still working on, or do you have this feeling like you'll never quite get there, you're always going to be just like fearful for your child? Like they're going to be 80, and if you happen to still be alive, you're going to be like, don't cross that road. Like what is your sense from where you are sitting right now with that for you guys? AnnaMarie, can we start with you?
yeah, so I definitely think there's a level that I'm still learning, just because I think that I had to unlearn a lot of things about just like being a perfectionist in life. But I would say that as a mom, I'm the oldest of 5, so and my youngest sister is 12 years younger than me. So like I got to see a little bit of like how my mom handled her 5th child, which was very much like the bottle dropped on the floor, it's fine. Just rinse it under some water. It doesn't need to be hot water. Rub it off a little bit, it's fine. So I never really worried about that kind of stuff on a regular basis. I'm like, oh no, it's fine. Like if she falls, like you're fine. Like rub it off. You're safe. Like we have different things that we use. I think if anything, I worry much more about like older her and emotional processing, just because I know for myself, like I grew up in a very different home. My parents are great, but like emotionally speaking, emotions just were not done in my house. So I think if anything, that's where I worry about, because it's so unfamiliar for me. The things I don't worry about are the things that I grew up seeing, and like, oh yeah, it's all right if like you don't get everything perfect, if they don't eat all organic food, like, so I would definitely say it's still a learning thing for me.
Okay. Monica, what about you? Do you feel like they're going to be taken care of? You good? Or is there some learning that's happening?
Um, we've spoken about this in other areas, but I feel like my two boys live, and I don't like this word, but I'm going to use it for lack of a better one, a very privileged life. They live the life of Riley. And so my goal, or I feel like my contract is, how do I create hardships for them, for that
Mm,
learning growth that I know is so important to becoming a strong human or a strong spirit, right? On both planes, being a good human and being their ultimate growth plane. Um, so it's a very interesting place to be. My kids are going to be more than fine. And I hope they that have some issues in their later adulthoods that they have to figure out on their own. And I hope that I have given them the tools to do so. And if I haven't, they'll figure it out. Like, you know, I came from a divorced family, uh, functioning alcoholics, very mentally and emotionally neglectful just because they did too, right? They were just repeating their patterns. And I figured it out. Like I'm here. Like so I'm more than and I guess it's like working through that mom guilt of like, not doing everything right. And because I had to wait so long, I was an older mom. I was 35 and 37 when I had my boys. I had done early education for 20 years. Like that was fine. It was like my own BS that started coming up through them, with them, because of them, like whichever way you want to put it. But I've in my own healing journey of that mom guilt, or like, are they going to be fine? Do I know they're divinely protected? Like all of that is yes, because one, they have the upper hand, right? Like we have to just honor that when your parents know better, they do better, and then therefore you're going to have better. And whether that means just being able to coast through life because whatever comes your way, you have the tools, you have the modalities, you're protected. So it's more so, how do you instill that in children when the hardships aren't really there for them?
mm. It's a good question. And like you said, you and I have definitely had that conversation, because so if none of y'all have figured it out, I am the one person in this group, happily so, who does not have children. Sometimes my nephew like is my stand-in, but he is still my nephew. Um, and happily, like I'm very, very okay with this. But I do have this feeling that my generation, so I'm late millennial, in 89, um, just I see basic my contemporaries, clearly you guys, but I see my contemporaries who are having children basically treating them like they've got kid gloves, in my opinion. And that might come off as a very like harsh opinion because I don't have children, but and I would be interested to hear your guys's thoughts on this of, we live in such a privileged, luxurious world. Not everybody has to grow their own food. Not everybody has to walk to school. Not everybody has to um you know uh not have technology. I don't know of a single child at this point that at 5 or younger in some cases doesn't have access to a cell phone. And I remember a time when I didn't have that. Like I was one of those last people who didn't have, like I started off my life without a computer, without a cell phone, and I had to go outside and play. So in this world of extreme luxury. You know, where is our boundary for our kids to get them to like be amazing functional human beings and like truly um be able to say, you know what, I know what it is to value money, to value somebody's time, to be respectful to our parents, because sometimes this luxury makes them very demanding and very like, why aren't you giving it to me now? So, Christina, do you have thoughts on this?
Yes, of course I do. um, my husband and I had immigrant parents, so money was always something that was that was being chased because they lost everything when they immigrated here. Both my husband and mine, we have that in common. But our children live very privileged lives, very, and as Monica just said, like it is actually teaching them community service and how very privileged they are. And that's actually something that I'm currently researching for my children because they don't understand how privileged they actually are and how many resources and support systems and activities and things that they get as a given that they don't realize that one, their parents didn't grow up with that, and two, a lot of their friends don't have that either. And even as simple as like choosing not to eat a meal just because I don't like the way the chef made it. No, it's not. No, it like my father would have just like been beside himself if I behaved in that manner. And it is really about, okay, how can we dial it back so that our children can be grateful for the life that we're providing for them and really understand how very fortunate they are to be able to have the support systems that they have, the activities that they get to do, and just the entertainment, the lifestyle, all of the things that we have been able to provide for them that we didn't receive as children. And even still with the struggles that they deal with, because it's not to say that my kids are carefree or stress-free. On the contrary, I believe that my children also deal with stressors that we didn't deal with because education was different back then. Because when we left school, whatever problems were at school stayed at school and didn't come home with us with our technology. So they're dealing with a very different dynamic that we didn't deal with when we were children. And that's not to say that they don't have things that stress them out and cause them anxiety. And to some of us, it's like, nah, it's not that big of a deal. These kids are really privileged, but they internalize it very differently than my generation did, because there's no way of shutting certain things off for them. And so it is figuring out that happy medium. And I do believe that that's where like finding a level of service for them that needs to be a key piece in these kids that are receiving all of these things that so many of us weren't able to because we hadn't been able to build the luxury that we currently have now. It wasn't there for me in my growing up experience. And so now that we're able to provide it for our kids, it's like, wait, now we have to dial it back a little bit because they don't get that we didn't have that. They don't, because to them it's a given. So
question, I'm going to challenge this a little bit. So
yeah.
like, as you said, we didn't have that, but our children do. But our children only have access to it because parents give them access to it. So if we're seeing that things like technology, for example, is allowing for them to like bring things like bullying from school to home and they don't get a break from it, why is it that parents aren't saying, you don't get a phone? You don't get a phone until you're older and can actually process things like that. And you have to, if you are being bullied at school, you have to come home, you have to talk about it the same way that you and I did, right? Because we didn't
So
have.
So my kids don't have phones, but they're on technology because their homework is on technology. So that's where it becomes challenging. Like we have to supervise them so that they don't get on their iMessages and start messaging their friends or whatever, but they're on technology because that's where their homework is. I mean, they have to do certain lessons on there on a daily basis. And I mean, my kids have desks in their room, but they can't do their homework at their desks because if I'm not watching them, they're not doing their homework. They're on YouTube. And I have everything like as blocked as you can possibly have it. But these kids, like, they figure it out. Like they figure it out. They find a way because they grew up with it. So like they know how to, like, break the firewalls, whatever you want to call it. Like they're capable. So now homework is at the counter in my kitchen so that I can every once in a while walk around and make sure that that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't have phones. But it's still it's not as easy as that, unfortunately. It just isn't.
AnnaMarie, what are your thoughts?
So in regards to the technology piece, so my daughter's 6, so she's kind of just like getting into more of the like kid stuff. I will say I think I have a different perspective in regards to I feel like I grew up privileged, not like super out there, but comfortably middle class, growing up, and both my parents married, and like although we didn't do emotions, I had a wonderful childhood. And I had a very different childhood than my daughter has, because just inherently because her father passed away, and then me trying to do it kind of by myself. I have a support group, but it's different. But I will say I'm very, very cognizant of the technology piece for her, because I can see how she gets sucked into it. So for her, it's like TV. That's like the only piece of technology she is allowed to do. Like even growing up, I know lots of people who, like, grandparents or people would let them play on the phones, and I was like, no, she's not allowed to do that. Sorry, nope. And it would drive my mom nuts. It drives everybody else around me nuts, because it's like it was easier to give her this thing, and I was like, no, she'll be fine. Even in the car, she'll be like, I'm bored. Like we'll be in the car for like an hour, and she'll be like, I'm so bored. And I was like, think with your thoughts. Boredom is great for the imagination and for creativity. And like I say that to her, I'm like, boredom is great for creativity. And she's like, oh, mom, no one else's parents say this. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't, and I think that for me, I didn't grow up with watching a ton of TV until later, because for a while we only had like one TV, and my dad was always watching TV. So like we had to go, and like I was a kid who would play with my toys for hours and hours and hours in my room, or like sometimes play outside with my brothers. But I try to instill that in her now, like, and by limiting, like even during the weekday, it's no TV, weekends, it's 2 hours on the weekends. And I really do that because I want her to have those same, like I want her to use her imagination. And even when I've done little experiments, I know this is very like how very therapy of me, where I've let her have like unlimited TV on the weekends, and it definitely changes her behavior and how she shows up. So I'm going to try to limit technology as much as I can. But even in the schools, like they do a lot of video work, they do a lot of stuff on like iPads. We don't have we don't even have a family iPad at this point. My parents have an iPad that she sometimes uses when she goes to visit her grandparents, but I just don't have that in the house a lot. And whenever we can, like I get outside, which I'm sure like lots of other parents do. I mean, it's definitely hard. I just, even from like a psychological level, I just see the changes in her very, very quickly. We had to have a conversation actually the other week, because she was watching Netflix and she had been watching this Barbie show. It's like, I don't, whatever. It's like one of those new Barbie shows on Netflix. And she started to respond to me and her godmother, Sarah, very like as if she is 16, 6 going on 16. And she would say, I don't know, mom, where you got that idea. And I was like, oh, hit the pause button, hit it real fast. And we had to have a sit down conversation. She was like, well, Stacy talks this way to Barbie. And I was like, Stacy and Barbie are sisters, first of all. I'm your mother. And second of all, like we just had to reset boundaries. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. But yeah, so that's kind of my perspective. And we try to rein it in as much as we can. I send her outside as much as I can. Go play. I tell her, like, go make up a story and go play outside. I don't know how that's gonna go in the future, but
That's fair. Mom, you come from a very different generation. You grew up very, very differently from every single one of us that are here. You certainly like raised me very differently than I would say most kids are raised. A couple of different things. And then like I'm interested in hearing y'all's perspective on her perspective. What do you think is something that parents are lacking now, raising kids, having kids, raising kids, that you think was there when you were growing up? And where do you think that we are just like, it doesn't matter like what generation, the struggle is just real as a parent?
So I think the lacking part of the generations now, and I really have two different ones. Abby and James are older, and then Sterling came along
When I was 10.
yeah, like so it's two different ones. And I will tell you that there was always boundaries. Like if I said something, I meant it. Like if I said y'all can go outside and play, but when the street lights come on, which y'all have seen those weird old commercials, right? When they come on, you better be home. And for them, at one point, I worked and ran an apartment complex. So I was in the office, they were outside, but they still had boundaries. And those boundaries, if they crossed them, they were held accountable. And I think now parents are so fearful of holding those boundaries only because kids are taught call the 911, you can't talk to me like that. I'm going to tell XYZ. I think the bottom line though is that if you don't have boundaries and you don't set them and you're not firm with them, what happens then is kids decide on their own that you're never going to do anything. So I can be mean, I can be a bully, I can be this, I can be that, because everything that I give you, and I think this is where the word privilege comes in. I know that it's a wider array than that, but I think that kids are not necessarily privileged, right? You all have money I probably didn't have or not, whatever that looks like. But I think what happens is that you're so worried about like what's going to happen to them if you punish them and they don't get to finish all of their extracurricular. These guys never had it. Never. Like that wasn't a thing. I worked 80 hours a week. I said, I am the one that takes care of you. I never used the single mother for anything. Like that wasn't even in my vocabulary. My thing is I chose to have my children. That is where my boundary was, right? I am not going to put it out into the world and say, well, it's everybody else's deal and they're learning all these things, right? So my boundaries, don't get me wrong, because I'm going to tell you a story about little Miss Abigail and technology. So she was probably, I don't know, 11, 12 maybe.
Yeah, something like
We had just gotten computers, whatever. I I ended up intercepting a package in the mail that she had gotten on the computer. Somebody in Africa or some weird country, this man was sending her bracelets, perfumes. You know what? As soon as I intercepted that, I got on the phone and I called the police and I said, I need a female officer here now, like right now. Like, this is stopping. I'm not even having a conversation with you. Like I need you to understand how scary and important this is. Like, I need you to believe that I'm not just telling you that because I don't want you on there. I need somebody who's in authority that can say, yep, I'm going to take everything off your computer and we are going to figure out who this is. So technology, even back in my day, even though it was just the computer and not the phones and all of that, I think, again, it was boundaries. Because after that, little girl, there was no more. Like, she was on the computer, she was doing her thing, she was on it. And I never did the, let me see your phone, which some parents have to. I get that. I never did, because my thing is I will find out. Like parents, you're like, dude, you don't even have to tell me that you're out doing something because I already know you did. Like, you can't even lie to me about it, kind of thing. So I think for the lack is that when you set boundaries, you have to. And Monica was talking about I want hardships for my children. The thing of it is, though, is I've found, and I've had all four of my children tell me what I did wrong as a parent, which part of me is grateful for. The other part of me got mad. The other part of me was like, well, you know what? I did the best I could. But I understand where you're coming from. So where we think hardship is not having money, right? I think that people who, are use the word privileged and say my kids have all these things, that's a hardship. And it's a hardship in a way that I think kids are like, I have everything, and they see somebody without, and they don't know what to do. So again, your kids all have hardships. They're just different. They're different than the hardship you had growing up because you're trying to give them, right? Monica, you look like you want to say something. Go ahead.
It is a hardship for them, and you have to keep those boundaries. And it's an interesting thing to go through as you're moving through this like soul contract and your own energetic space and stuff. And it's not the money, it's their attitude, it's their appreciation and their joy and their gratitude that you're watching. And you're like, the old saying, like, money can't buy you happiness. I think just look at a kid who's privileged with money and who never sees their parents, or whatever hardship. And I think you're absolutely right, there is this natural hardship. But it's interesting to do it as a parent who sees the privilege but also sees the like spiritual journey with inside of that as well. And when I mean I want to have my kids to have hardship, that's not like I'm creating hardships, but I'm setting boundaries. No, you cannot, we're not going to Lucky Strikes yet again and dropping $75 on video games just because we can, right? And saying no, and there's no reason why. It's not because you were not well behaved or this, it's just no. And that's a hardship for them. What do you mean I can't have that? Like, well, that's just not how our life works.
All right, everyone. So in an effort to make this as easily digestible as possible, we are going to hit pause on this conversation. Definitely come back and see parts 2 and 3, maybe even 4 of this conversation. And if you are looking for the full length to our conversation, you can find that too here on my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in part 2.